Don't you wish it was your job to tell everyone else what they're doing wrong? Well, it is now, except for you're going to be telling yourself what you're doing wrong. It's more fun than it sounds. I might have said this before, but revision is one of the most important things you can get good at. I don't care how good your first draft is, it's how you change it and how you make that second draft that much better. This is one way. Revision isn't the most fun process in the world for a lot of people, but it's probably the most important when it comes to writers. I don't like to quote famous authors very much, but there's one that really fits. Ernest Hemingway, another guy who I don't like to quote all that much, did say one great thing. He said, and I quote, "All first drafts are shit." What he meant by this was that too many people sit down and expect to write something brilliant. But real writers write something down to get it down and then go back over it and make it brilliant. Most of the work is done in the rewriting process, not while doing the initial draft. The initial draft should just be getting stuff down so you can work with something. The problem, though, is that as writers, we tend to get attached to our work. Because we spend a certain amount of time on it, we're invested in it to a certain degree. And it's very hard to find the problems with your own work if you're invested in it. I've been trying all semester to get you out of this. That's one of the reasons why we have the sample student essays. It's one of the reasons why we have the peer review session. But ultimately, it needs to be something that you decide to do. You have to decide to get critical with your own work. You have to become a critic. And this isn't difficult in terms of a lot of steps. It's just difficult to get over you liking your own stuff and being invested in it. If it doesn't work, it needs to go. If it's not working, it needs to be fixed. And you need to approach this using the standards of judgment, which we've already talked about. So, when you're being a critic to your own work at the top level, is the argument itself possible? Is it supportable? Is it arguable? And is it interesting? It's got to be possible and supportable for it to be arguable. We had that video already where we talked about the requirements for an argument, so you know all that, but it also has to be something that someone will care about. I'm kind of the mind that if you try hard enough, you can make any topic interesting if you yourself are interested in it. It takes some work, though, so you have to be brutal with yourself. Is anyone else going to care about this? And the question, will anyone else care about this, can be boiled down to, have I made it so someone else will care about this? Evidence. Is there supporting evidence for the argument? Is that evidence reliable? Is there enough of it? I've said before that I read as a stupidly literal, stupidly critical reader, and you should too. Don't go through your paper knowing how things will fit together. Read it like someone who doesn't know it, and then see if you're convinced. Put yourself out of your own head as a writer, and put yourself in the head of a reader. If you were a reader coming to this and someone else wrote it, would they buy it? Is there enough stuff there for them? Organization. Does the argument proceed in an orderly fashion? Do the argumentative points flow logically? Is there a reason why this one is after this one? If this one builds towards this one, then they're in the right space. If they all seem random, you haven't done a good enough job in establishing an argumentative flow. Do these things build towards a viable conclusion? In the end, a paper should broaden out to the world and larger significance. Do these points do that? Are you starting to move as you go through the essay beyond just simply talking about your subject and connecting it to things that people will care about? That's a lot to do with organization. Structure. Are there logical breaks between paragraphs? Are those paragraphs themselves easy to understand? paragraph is a unit of meaning. It's a point in support of your argument. The topic sentence, this is part of the structure of a paragraph, should directly say what this paragraph does to support the thesis. If you're reading a paragraph and it looks like you're starting to talk about something else than you started with, then you probably need another paragraph. Are the paragraphs organized in a way that makes sense? Do you have that topic sentence? Do you have specific evidence? Do you explain how that evidence fits the argument? Finally, the last thing to look at is grammar and mechanics. Once you get the argument down, though, the argument has to make sense before you start messing with the words. Is the actual writing clear? Are the sentences easy to figure out? You should make the sentences as simple as you possibly can. The only reason for a really complex sentence is that you're trying to put across a thought that cannot be expressed any other way. One last thing about revision. Once you go through this, you start at the big picture. Does the argument make sense? Go fix all the little individual parts. Worry about the individual parts of organization. Worry about getting each individual part structured correctly. Go into mechanics and at the sentence level fix everything. But once you do that, you've got to go back and look at the big scale. Changing the small scale will affect the big scale. A good reviser will be brutal with themselves and able to put themselves in someone else's head. That's your job. Become a good reviser. Well, it's important to love yourself in real life, not so much the issue here. I don't want you to beat yourself up or anything, but the more stuff you point out, the more stuff you can fix. And ultimately, this is about improving your work. Good luck on it. See you next video.